The only thing I need to know is if people are on
Yes, he said they are. Yeah, because he just put it through some feed things.
Understand why I hate
Right?
She has her own cloud.
Got some yard signs up.
Judge Miller, why is it not on the TV?
The council meeting will please come to order. If you would rise and give your attention to Councilwoman Schwartz for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last month, when I knew I was going to have the month of February for invocations, I went and visited a couple pastors at Topeka Baptist Church in my district at 45th and Gage. And Pastor Rhodes was here last week. And before that, Chaplain John Potter was here the week before. And Chaplain Potter is a member of Topeka Baptist Church. And tonight we have with us Pastor David Rudy, who has been a student pastor for the last 4 years and has been at Topeka Baptist Church for the last 6 months. He invests in the lives of youth and actively integrates his students into community involvement.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, you tell us in your word that we are to pray for our leaders and civil authorities. As these men and women make decisions tonight and lead the direction of our community, I ask that you give them wisdom, empower them with vision, and direct their thoughts and discussions throughout this evening. Our community is thankful for the work that will go on here tonight, and I ask that this will be a successful night in shaping of the future of Topeka. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no proclamations this evening. We do have presentations, and to introduce those, the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd first like to bring Judge Miller up to provide a presentation on the alternative sentencing court. And as he's approaching, I had the opportunity last Wednesday to sit in and watch the cases, and I planned on staying about 10 minutes, and about an hour later I was getting dragged out of there. It really was fascinating, and the impact that it has on people's lives who sometimes get thrown aside and trampled over by the system. I think this is a phenomenal opportunity, and I want to just thank the judge for his leadership on that, and go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, and thank both you and Councilwoman Hilder for attending our alternative sentencing court, and I have others that have already expressed an interest in attending in the future. There have been a few articles already, actually even before we began our court, that about the only name mentioned was my own, and I wanted to make the point tonight that this is a lot broader than Judge Miller. I have a number of people here which we'll get to in a moment. First, a little bit about specialty courts. It's been a rising phenomena for the last 10 or 20 years across the country, the development of specialty courts. You may be familiar with some of them. Mental health court, which is essentially what the alternative sentencing court for us is. DUI courts, drug courts. We have Shawnee County District Court Drug Court that's, I think everyone is in agreement, has been phenomenally successful in the few years it's been in existence. Veterans courts, homeless courts. I keep learning about additional courts. I learned about the homeless court only a few weeks ago from a gentleman who was in jail who had an experience out in Colorado with a homeless court. By and large, they all operate from the same premise, and that is, in my words, sticking some people in jail over and over costs a lot of money and doesn't really help anyone. And so we operate from the premise that if we utilize an alternative to just putting people in jail over and over, maybe we can get results that are both beneficial to society and most particularly, hopefully, beneficial to the individual involved. Just to illustrate, I could get a couple hundred of these kinds of facts, but just to illustrate what we're dealing with, approximately 20% of inmates in our nation's jails suffer from a severe mental illness. I saw a number that said 70% suffer from a mental illness, 20% it's estimated suffer from a severe mental illness. This last statement is taken directly from our own Shawnee County Jail Director. He indicates that the Shawnee County Department of Corrections spends about $95 a day to house an inmate. However, it costs about $300 a day to house an inmate with mental illness. He's here to answer questions as to why the disparity, but essentially it comes down to the care, the increased care that's required and the medications that come along with it. As I mentioned earlier, this has been a collaborative effort, and it was one that began before me. I happened on to the fact that there was a group of people that were meeting with the idea of a mental health court even before it had crossed my mind. I hooked up with the folks that were working on that. We informally created a steering team that's been planning this, studying it, developing it for close to 2 years before it was actually implemented. Have a number of those people here this evening, as well as a number of people who are involved today in the implementation of the court. I'm going to go down the row, introduce who's here, and then I'm going to attempt to mention those that aren't here that couldn't make it, and I know I'll leave someone out. For those of you who've never had an experience dealing with Vallejo Behavioral Health Services, this community is extremely, extremely blessed in having the quality of mental health care that we have that is offered by that organization. Have several people here this evening that have worked on this project from Vallejo, first of which is Lisa Hastings, Jaylyn Beatty, Ginger Bradley, Jordan Cardone. Yeah, stand up one at a time. You don't have to stay up there long, but just so they know who we're talking about. Next to Jordan, there we go. Now you see. Next to Jordan, Officer Sean Kimball, who's a member of the city's crisis intervention team. Another thing I learned along this path is what an exemplary crisis intervention team the city of Topeka enjoys. They were a forerunner in their area, and they are looked at across the state for training, teaching, and developing other teams across Kansas. Representing people from the jail, I use the short term, Jeff Brewer, and the director, Brian Cole. One of our steering committee members, Amy Arnett Gurman, who works with an organization that some of you may be familiar with by the acronym of PARS, Preventive Alcohol Related Prevention and Recovery Services. Never try it. She was one of the forerunners developing the drug court over at Shawnee County before she moved on to her current position. Kathy Walker, who's the head of our court probation department. And last and certainly not least, our defense counsel. These are two of the associates of the Topeka's municipal court's court-appointed attorneys. Jonathan Snyder, this is Kevin Cook, you know him by his nickname, Commissioner. And they also, in addition to serving in general as court-appointed counsel, they are vital to the team that is comprised with the alternative sentencing court. And let me see who I forgot. Josh Luttrell, who couldn't be here, representing the prosecutor's office. Captain Bill Cochran, the head of the crisis intervention team for the city of Topeka. Chris Wills from Vallejo, Tony Siebert from Vallejo. Susan Duffy, actually I didn't invite Susan. She was just here last week. I didn't want to put her through 2 consecutive city council meetings. the Topeka Metro has been a very generous partner in donating bus passes, which when you work with this in this area, you'll find out what a vital component transportation is for the folks that we're working with. And we do appreciate their generosity. And last but not least, someone's close relative by marriage, Jared Harson, the director of the Shawnee County Drug Court. He was one of the pioneers that we relied on early in our development for structuring the court. I'm not going to read these PowerPoints. I will make comments as we go through. I want to go back to the concept of an alternative sentencing court, or a specialty court, if you will. It's founded on the premise that intensive supervision and treatment is the way to address the issues that these people suffer from, not incarceration. We do have incarceration that's held as a stick. We have carrot and stick process here. The stick is incarceration. You don't want to go to jail? That's fine. We don't want you to go to jail. We want you to participate in this program. And the alternative to jail time is that you agree that you will cooperate, you will work with us, you will be intensively supervised, and you will agree to the treatment as recommended by the team. The purpose ultimately is to reduce repeat offenses as well as cut down on incarceration. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our actual operation. My comments will not match the slides. The slides are there for people that want to see some of the nuts and bolts of what went into it, but I also want to spend my limited amount of time talking about what the city manager experienced last week, and that is just what are we doing. We have, by the way, I will say that everything we've done so far comes with no cost to a local taxpayer. We've been very fortunate in that we've secured some grant. Ginger and Jordan are grant funded. It's a Department of Justice grant with no matching money involved. That's a limited time, but they are being funded through the use of a grant. We will have in the near future, we're in the process now of hiring a half-time coordinator to actually take over what Kathy and I and some of the people involved are currently doing that we won't have the time for when we get fully loaded. We need someone paying full attention week to week to just coordinating these events. And we will be hiring a person under a grant that we received from the Kansas Health Foundation to do that. All right, as we noted, we first started in January. Our very first court was January 7th. As I said, Councilwoman Hiller was there, and we had two people. In December, I was worried that when we had already set January 7th months ahead of time, and I was worried if we got to January 7th what we were going to do if we didn't have anyone. And they began to trickle in, and once they began to trickle in, they began to pour in. We now have, on tomorrow's docket, we have, I said 7 in my notes, but as I understand it, we added 1 today. We have 8 people. We've grown to 8 people on tomorrow's docket. We have a self-imposed cap of 20 people. We set that really not knowing what we were doing. That still remains flexible. If anything, we may not want to do 20 because this has become very intensive work, and we want to do good work, not just try to satisfy a number. But our cap is currently set at 20. When we get to 20 individuals, we intend to stop until we've mastered things. Up to this point, we've screened 14 individuals. 10 of them have been recommended to the alternative sentencing court of those that were screened. Ginger does the screening for us. She looks at history. She looks at what their suffering is, what their criminal history is. We look at as a team at whether or not we believe they will benefit from the program. And from that, the 14 that were screened, 10 of those were recommended to participate. 6 were accepted, 3 are pending acceptance, and 1 is being currently held out of state, incarcerated. We've had 2 people who declined to participate. This is still their choice. They're given the choice of participating, and if they're not willing to do it, it will not work. So we have to have the acceptance of the people involved. We had 2 that were not recommended, 2 that were referred but didn't make it to their appointment. It's a struggle in many respects. It's a struggle just to get folks from one week to the next and making their assigned appointments, taking their prescribed medications. It's a challenge sometime just to get them to relate, period, to relate. It's very difficult for me, not being a professional in this field, to have conversations sometime with people who are in front of me, but they're over there or they're over here. And that's a struggle, but that's part of the process. That's part of the reason treatment is so important, so we can get them focused, cooperating, participating, and having them grow in their own life. Flipping through. One thing I want to speak about that I glossed over when you looked at that list of collaborating partners, one of them was the donating public. We do offer incentives, small incentives for folks that participate. It may be a movie pass, it may be a bus ticket, it may be a $20 gift card to Walmart or a local store, a local restaurant, because we want them to understand that we recognize that they are improving and that they should be recognized for it. City manager got to see that in effect last week. It was actually the first time we really got to say, you're doing good, congratulations, and let's give you a hand or let's give you a card. My point is, in pausing here, is that I'm still looking for someone to assist the court in soliciting donations to this program for that component. The court, myself, Kathy, we are not allowed to solicit through our code of ethics. We can't do that. So we need to rely on someone from the outside who will do that for us. I happen to think there's a fantastic opportunity out there from people who embrace this program, who have the wherewithal, that would donate if I just had someone to rely on to go out and ask them, and I'm kind of making that plea tonight. My email is on the last slide here for anyone that may be watching that would like a copy of this presentation. Just email me at this address and I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint. Kathy, what did I overlook? What? Thank you. She said I did great. That's what she's required to say.
Thank you. I would like if you could give this interesting, excellent presentation. What is, if in lieu of incarceration, what would that person be helped, or what would they do? What do they do?
Well, I hope they're not watching, because it's a lot worse. Okay, because they, Ginger, you want to help me here, go through what a treatment program would look like? They have to come to court. There's 4 phases, as the PowerPoint points out. In the first phase, you come to court every week. That's not the norm. Well, we have a few people who come to court every week because they have a new charge every week, but that's another story. But they're required as part of their probation. They're placed on probation. 1 year, it's a 1-year program, and during that probation, they have to come to court. They have to stay clean. They have to take their medication as they're asked to. They have to report to probation office. They have to meet with Ginger. What have I missed?
That, and what we help them with a lot is housing.
I told them they wouldn't have to speak.
Yeah, but it'd be helpful
They can't hear you unless you're up here.
If you would come over to the microphone, please. Thank you.
The benefits that folks who participate in this program receive are the intensive supports of our services. So some folks haven't been able to get connected for various reasons. Sometimes it's the stigma of mental illness that kind of keeps them from coming. And so a lot of our participants are able to get more intensive services, or services through the grant that we can provide that they may not be eligible for otherwise. A lot of our folks kind of struggle with homelessness, substance abuse addiction, as Judge Miller pointed out. And so those are some of the things that we can kind of help out with, get them connected to community resources, and just be an ongoing support that they would not have had otherwise.
Okay. Thank you. Helpful. Council members, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Judge Miller. I know I handed you a big, thick book one time and told you I was interested in mental court, so this is awesome, because I've had some constituents call me. So if they don't follow through with the program and they have to go to jail, do we, I guess the jail people, do we acknowledge what their issue is? Or how do we handle that?
let me take your question in a bit of a different direction. It's not as simple as you go to jail, okay? We had someone who fell back last week. They had a dirty UA, and so they were sanctioned. So he did 5 days in jail. He didn't do his original sentence. He did a short period of time, and it was healthy in many regards. And one, well, actually, it didn't work out like we planned, but it was designed so we could get his meds along the lines that he hadn't been taking, and we were more able to do that when he was in a controlled environment, or at least that was our plan. He was a good example for the rest of the people in the room that day. We took him first to demonstrate to everybody that was there, we are serious. This isn't about getting out of jail and not having, consequences. It's about improving where you're at so you don't go back to jail, but if you ask, you will be sent. So he got a sanction. I'll see him tomorrow. He's out. He'll be back. Hopefully tomorrow he got the point, as well as everybody else in the room. Understanding that we are dealing with people that have, besides mental illness, they have some severe struggles.
Right.
We have a lady already in the program who's suffered from alcoholism for 30 years. It was a great event last week to celebrate her week of sobriety. It was great. We felt good. You could tell she felt good. And that's part of what we do. You can't have good mental health if you're indulging in illegal substances. They don't go together. I don't expect her to enjoy that kind of success all along. In fact, I really expect the opposite. But when we discover that, she'll be sanctioned. It may be a scolding. It may be a lecture. It may be a day or two in jail. If you keep doing that, if it turns out that you cannot successfully participate in the program after you've been sanctioned, and if your violation is so severe, you get cut loose. Not only do you do your jail time, but I think worse than that, you don't get to enjoy the benefits that come from this program that we're extending to you.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, and I'd like to thank the committee. I think it's long overdue. I've had constituents call with with people that stopped taking their meds, and that's why they keep going back. So actually, it's awesome to hear this. Good job, great job. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be real brief. About 20 years ago, I was the supervisor for adult services for the Medicaid agency and oversaw the residential care facilities. We had a judge in Salina that did adjudications that were done so that you did not have to bring them in shackles and chains to the courtroom. Do you know if that's still going on anywhere in the state, and is that a possibility we could do that here?
You lost me again, please.
Okay. They did adjudications by TV and at the mental, like it would be at Vallejo Mental Health Center. It was at the Salina Mental Health Center. Instead of having them leave the jail and come to court, and it was all done by TV, which really helped the patient, and it was good with the court. And I don't know if that is still going on in Salina, but I wondered if that would ever be something that we could do here.
Yeah, I don't know, but it does remind me of a fact that I ran across in preparing for tonight. It struck me as prolific. It's estimated that the number of people who suffer from severe and persistent mental illness who are now in a penal institution is 10 times the number that are being treated in our state hospitals across the country. Mm-hmm. If you believe that jail is a place for mental health treatment, you need to spend some time with me.
Yeah.
It helps no one to have someone who is suffering from mental illness housed in the jail, and that's not taking anything away from the jail. They do a wonderful job, but they're a jail, they're not a hospital.
Well, I want to acknowledge also the group, all the organizations that are part of this. I think that is so tremendous, and I think it speaks well for our community that the organizations can come together with a goal, a purpose like this, and to see then what it is accomplishing, because that's the way it's done through a lot of different people, as you say, that makes it possible for any program to work. Other council members comment? Oh, Councilman Brown.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor. Long ago, I worked in prison health nursing, so I have firsthand experience with mental health inmates, and I applaud all of you for the work you're doing. I truly do. And I look forward to next January, and I hope that you may have a couple of your success stories that'll be willing to share their experience, because one thing I would like to see is more of the stigma taken away from mental illness. So thank you very much.
And we had, a few of us had a chance to enjoy that when we visited Wichita's mental health court. They had some graduates that they brought in for us, and it was extremely heartwarming to hear where they had been and where they were. It made you want to do that for them.
Good. Seeing no other comments, thank you very much for the presentation, and to all of you for your participation and help. Thank you. City Manager. So we have some people leaving, but as they leave, City Manager, if you want to introduce the next presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Brandon Kaufman, the Chief Fiscal Officer for the city, to step forward. He's going to provide the fourth quarter preliminary financial report. As he's coming forward, I just want to make a couple of comments. Our finances are looking good. We've worked very diligently to put in place the techniques and the communication that allows us to take a very close look at our revenue streams, projecting them better, and the expenditures. And you're going to see some very good numbers tonight. We want you to, and maybe I'll touch on this at the end also, but just want you to remember that while we have we've made a lot of progress, and we're sitting in a much more solid position, especially as we get ready to go into the next budget season, things are still always a challenge and moving, and where you'll see that we don't have, where we do have expenditures that have increased, they've increased in the personnel area and the budget area, and those are things that are very difficult for us to control, and we're taking continuing to take a very close look at that. But I'm just excited about where we're at a year into this new team here and the work that they've done, and over the last 4 budgets that we've had a chance to work on, I think the city has, and I commend you all, have been very disciplined and very committed to doing what's right in the long-term best interest of the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Brandon?
I am logging in.
You are getting...
Should I talk longer?
Yeah,
Yes.
keep it. That was a great introduction. The timing was perfect. Now we're ready.
He's good with numbers. He wasn't like the AV guy.
Mayor and members of the council, I have before you tonight the fourth quarter preliminary financial report, and I stress preliminary because we're still receiving information. For example, sales tax, we accrue January and February back to the prior year, so we won't get that till later in the month. That's a pretty big indicator of where we're at, because the February sales tax is one of the largest because there's a 2-month lag, so that would be the December Christmas sales season. Also, in addition to that, the audit everything won't be complete until the audit's complete and we receive adjusting entries from the auditors. So first thing, why the tree? So to have a good tree that produces good fruit, you must have strong roots, well watered. So similarly, the city of Topeka finances have to be well watered, and in order to provide the services and meet the policy objectives of this governing body. So kind of the roots that we'll get into, these are really the core indicators of the financials. So this is all funds, so every budgeted fund within the city, it's basically taking them and collapsing them together. So you can see total revenues were up 2.1 million over the prior year, or a 1% increase. Compared to total expenditures, we're actually down 2.96 million for a 1% decrease. So the third slide here, this is all funds major revenues. So basically major revenue, these 5 revenue streams here incorporate about 66% of the revenue. So they 2/3 of the city's revenues out of these 5 streams. You can see there's variations between them. The largest difference by far was ad valorem property taxes was up 4.7 million, or 14%. That varies all the way down to water fees, which were down 290,000, or down 1% for the year. So there's variations. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you have any questions, I can stand and answer. Specifically on the sales tax, I want to point that out. This says they're up 1%. That's also on the accrual basis. So if you looked actually on a cash basis, which is probably more comparable for how we're doing financially, those numbers are up 3% for the year. So we continue to see good news on the economic side of things. Total, like I mentioned earlier, total expenses were down 1% for the year. As you can see, they vary. The largest variation there was on contractual expenditures were down 11%, and the largest difference of about 8.5 million they were down. That's primarily due to variations in the citywide half-cent projects, as those expenses go up and down depending upon the projects that are being completed. The personnel was up about 3%, or 2.9 million for the year. If there's any questions there, I can try to.
Yeah.
Are you wanting
Councilman
us
Hiller.
to hold until the
Yeah,
end?
do you
or
want,
should
shall
they
we,
ask
I
this?
think it'd be good to go all the way through,
Okay.
preferable, so we don't get bogged down in one area.
Okay.
Easier, thank you.
So what made those roots, or what made those finances stronger? So I'd say these are some key areas. Expenditure reductions that have been put in place throughout the various budgets from 13, 14, and 15 as we move forward. Financial recoveries helped quite a bit. Like I mentioned, sales tax growth is up 3%. Building permits were up 4% for the year. So we're continuing to see construction growth. And in addition to that, just looking at non-farm payroll jobs in the city, they're up 1% from December 2013 to December 2014. So we're continuing to see that economic growth. Also, in addition to that, were decisions made by this body for an increased mill levy for the 2014 budget, and also increased franchise fees, primarily with the West Star increasing from 5% to 6%. So what are some of those financial results? And this is kind of from 2013 to now. So looking back at the 2013 budget, that was actually approved in August of 2012. There was that budget was projected to have a general fund balance that decreased to 5%. So due to mid-year cuts that were made in 2012 going into 2013, that resulted in a $3.9 million increase to the fund balance, with a 12% ending fund balance. For the 2014 budget that was adopted in August of 2013, that was basically a balanced general fund budget. The preliminary results that we'd like to share tonight is a $4.7 million increase to the fund balance. So we're looking at approximately a 17% ending balance. So above the goal of the 15% that the city manager has so desired. So also, in addition to that, just looking at the 2015 budget, it was a balanced budget with no mill levy increase associated with that. So we'll continue to monitor 2015 as we move forward. And so as we've discussed in the past, I also wanted to touch on not only the fund balance, but also days of unrestricted cash. So you can see in 2012, and this is basically saying what cash do we have at year end, minus any salaries and wages, and minus any accounts payable that's outstanding. So we went from -5 days at the end of 2012 to 12 days at the end of 2013, and now to 34 days at the end of 2014. So lots of progress there. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the ending balance, like I mentioned earlier, was about $4.7 million increase. That's about a 47% increase on the ending balance from the prior year. And how do we do that? Well, revenues were up 1.1 million over budget. And that's just based on some of the strong growth that we've seen with sales tax. Development fees coming in higher than projected. Expenditures were also under budget by 2.8 million as mid-year cuts were put in place for expenditure reduction, and also departments held the line on expenses in 2014. The water fund year-end results, you can see moving on the left-hand side, days of unrestricted cash. 112 in 2012 to 127 in 2013, and moving down to 91 days in 2014. GFOA recommends basically a 90-day base, and then based on the experiences of the community to adjust it from there. So we're kind of right at that base for what they recommend. You can see the ending net position, which is functionally the net worth of the water utility, taking into account all of its assets, including land, buildings, went down by 1.7 million, or a 3% decrease. The wastewater fund year-end results, you can see 2012 we had 144 days, 2013 moved to 96, and we're currently looking at about 82 days. You see the decrease in the ending net position of about $4.8 million decrease, or a 5% decrease.
Now, I'm going to interrupt just
Okay.
to ask, can you explain a little bit better what you mean by days of unrestricted cash? I think that may be a term that
Okay.
a lot of people aren't familiar with.
Okay, so when we're looking at days of unrestricted cash, we want to know basically how much cash is truly available at year end when we back out all those liabilities. So that's taking the total expenses of the year, dividing that by 365 days, and then dividing that by how much cash we have available. So that's getting back to, that's where we come up with that 82 days available cash. So that would assist with, you know, any type of emergency or obligations that might come up. And this is just gauging it at one point in time, but the best time to really gauge that is at year end. So. The stormwater year-end results, I'd say this typically has a little bit more unrestricted cash in there. You can see in 2012, 388 days, 482 for 2013, and moving to 461 days in 2014. This fund historically has utilized more cash for projects and not bonded as much. Not included in that unrestricted cash is the approximately 5.2 million that's set aside for the levee project. You can see the net position on that fund is estimated to increase about 500,000, or 2%. So kind of the overall message, like the city manager said, finances are stabilizing. And the utilities, I know there's some negative numbers there, but I believe actions that have been taken by this governing body will help to correct that moving forward into the future. This report will also be available online, and there's a lot more information in here that I covered tonight in the presentation. So if any of you have any questions about this, you can email me.
Okay, good, thank you.
With that, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, well, I want to first also acknowledge sort of your opening part about we now can pretty accurately see where we ended the year. It's always tempting to know, in January, or January the 15th, quickly, we want to know how we are at the end of the year, and how do we stand, and what the results are going to be. But I know we pay bills January and February that were accrued back in that time. So that's why we're here, not in January the 15th, stating what our imbalance is going to be, right?
That's correct.
And I think that's very important for people to be aware of. And I think the other then is the sales tax. So the trend is improving. I think that's the vital. If it is by the end of this year, we see sales tax, and of course that's transit gas tax and other things, and all are improving, correct?
Mr. Mayor, yes. Across the board, I think we're really seeing the financials improve in sales tax, 3%, TGT. I don't have that number in front of me right now, but I know that's up probably around 2% too. So franchise fees are up 14%. Not all of that has to do with the increases in the franchise fees. A lot of it's based on weather. So, you know, with a cold winter, especially last year, that really drove up franchise fees for 14. So, yeah.
Councilwoman Hiller has questions.
You in part answered the question that I had, and that was back to just the ad valorem property taxes and the 14% increase. We did raise taxes, the council did, that started then in 14. Were there other changes? Like, did we have any properties that had been on a 10-year abatement that came on the rolls, or the property tax values improved, or just more properties? Was there any of that?
Councilmember Hiller, I don't have that information in front of me specifically tonight, but okay. I believe closer to April we'll be coming back with some of that information. I know that I don't think there were any properties specifically that came back on the tax rolls this year, but moving forward into the upcoming years, with some of the economic development successes of the community, some of those are going to start coming back onto the tax rolls.
Thank you.
And I could add, I know there were some properties that were in bankruptcy that were sold, some significant increases where back taxes were coming in that would benefit the county and the city rather significantly.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, you did a fine job. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's a good format that you're using in the trees and roots things. All right, we will continue then with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgass.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Brown. Here. Ortiz. Here. Everhart. De La Isla. Here. Manspeaker. Here. Schwartz. Here. Schmidt.
Here.
And Harmon.
And Deputy Mayor Everhart is ill, and quite ill earlier over the weekend, and now doing better, but I know she could not be here this evening. For the agenda, we'll recognize Councilwoman Hiller for additions to the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass. I have 2 items, both related to St. Patrick's Day activities. If we could add 2 resolutions to the action items on the agenda, they would become, I think, items 5D and 5E. One is from the Celtic Fox and is for the street festival on St. Patrick's Day. That's where we block off 8th Street every year. And the other is from Mater Dei Parish for the Irish Fest that they have on the grounds of Assumption Church. Both of these are the permission to sell alcohol outside. Everyone apologizes for the lateness. They're coming in. They need to get these approved this evening in order to get their ABC permits in time for the event.
And you will move
to add I would those. Move, therefore, given those circumstances, to add these 2 items.
Okay. Councilwoman De La Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the items are added to the agenda. There are no other additions or deletions, and there is no executive session this evening. So we will proceed with the consent agenda.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Denise Everhart granting Diana Burns an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. B is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Robert Fitzgerald to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending February 28, 2017. C is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Derek Carpenter to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending February 28, 2017. D is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Sean Guile to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending February 28, 2017. E is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Olivia Marshall to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending February 28, 2017. F is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Mary Powell to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending February 28, 2017. G are minutes of the regular meeting of February 10, 2015, and there are no applications.
Thank you. That is the consent agenda. In your pleasure, Councilwoman Del Isla. He moves to approve. Councilman Schmidt seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read. And council members, you will note that we have 5 appointees to the Sustainability Advisory Board, I believe, which makes it complete. 4 of those are reappointments. We have a new person coming on. I'd like to introduce Robert Fitzgerald. If you would stand, has an excellent background and resume and interest in this area. So we're very glad to have you with your service. Thank you. If there's another member I see, Derek Carpenter. Is there any other member here that we just approved the appointment of that I missed? Thank you, Derek. And Derek has been the chair and been a part of this. Thank you for your work. Okay, then we will proceed with the action items. The first is an ordinance on records.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning fees and procedures for record requests amending City of Topeka Code Sections 220-090, 220-110, 220-120, and 1010-050, and specifically repealing said original sections.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask Mr. Sublette to provide information on this and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. This ordinance that's in front of you would allow essentially the fees on open records requests to be set administratively. The ordinance hasn't been dealt with in over 15 years, and the goal is that we recoup the actual cost of what it takes the city to produce the records. That's kind of it in a nutshell. There were a couple other documents attached to the ordinance. One is a kind of comparison to other agencies and other cities in the state. And the third is a draft of what a proposed fee schedule would look like. Just to give some background, last year there were 346 core requests made to the city. And that number, I look back to 2010, it's been surprisingly pretty consistent that we get about that number of requests each year.
Could you repeat that number of it?
Sorry, 346.
346.
And we've also been asked, aren't all of these records available online? No, not all the records are available online. A lot of times people will need, they'll want a certified copy of a court record or certified ordinance, so those aren't online. Our law enforcement reports, fire reports aren't online. That's a lot of what the requests are. And obviously, if there's in-depth or specific records, those aren't online. Out of the 346, I went through them all today from last year. Of those, 14 required 5 hours or more of staff time. So the majority of them are simply needing a police report or a fire report, something that's produced relatively quickly. There were some, obviously, that took more staff time. And if there is somebody wants an item and we know it's online, we just provide them with a letter stating where they can go and get that. Obviously, by statute, if they want a copy of it, then we will copy it, and there'll be a fee for that. And a lot of times, the legal department reviews them. There may be attorney-client privilege, medical information. There's 55 different exceptions within the Kansas Open Records Act. So just to give you kind of a snapshot of what that looks like. for the city. And again, when you compare what we're proposing with what other cities, the Attorney General's office, other places do, I think it is comparable. And this is just, all we can do is just make this revenue neutral. That's what the statute allows, is that we're being compensated for the service that we provide when there is an open records request. And I know the chief is here and might be able to address some of the questions on police reporting. The fee has gone up for that with the company that we contract with. I think it was $2.50 when the original contract was, and now I think it's $5. So there's a change in what we're, in the ordinance there as well. So again, this is just an attempt to actually recoup from the agencies or the individuals that are requesting the record the cost of the city, so that it's not spread out over all the taxpayers of the city, but the agencies that are requesting those records. You may have saw this weekend the Kansas Press Association, and Mr. Rencher can correct me if I got that name wrong. They reviewed the ordinance in an article and said that they thought that it was a good ordinance. They liked the fact that there was at least a draft of what these costs would be, so that it's not hidden from the public, so they know what the costs are, so that we can be transparent. And for that, I'd stand for any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Salette? Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Schmidt, yes.
This draft of the fee schedule, are we planning on posting that online and setting guidelines for how that changes?
The draft will be available in the clerk's office, and I'm turning to the clerk that that's something that we could post online.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chad, I thought you just mentioned that we did go up with the police department, a couple of years ago, didn't we? On those fees, and we're going up again? How much?
I think if we look at lines 56 through 59, and Chief, you can, Mr. Mayor, if I may, Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, it's going from $5 to $8. And again, that would be a cost-neutral shift based on the company that the police department's working with that provides those reports.
So, okay.
So we don't do them ourselves? That's not in-house?
Chief Brown, you want to address those
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
questions?
So, Councilmember, what happens is we outsource this to a company that is it's called U.S. Reporting, and their fee was $2.50 per report. It's gone up to $5 per report. In 2013, the police department, it cost us $2,465 to produce these reports. This year in 2014, it was $4,700 reports. So what that means is the taxpayers, all taxpayers in Topeka, were being charged $4,000 to pay for these reports. We're just trying to get in line with these other agencies within the state of Kansas.
When did we outsource that? I always thought it was in-house. When did we outsource that?
It's been several years. I don't know the exact time frame, but it's been quite some time.
Okay. And so that would be, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that would be $8 a page or $8 a report?
So the accident reports will be remaining the same at $8. For example, right now, for clerical work, we were looking at $13 per hour. We would go to $15 per hour for that type of work. And then we have professional administrative, IT, and legal review, that by bringing these up to what the industry standard is right now, what the rest of the agencies in the Kansas area are doing, it would just basically break even so that the police department didn't have to pay out of pocket to provide these reports to those that were needing reports.
You guys got it. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Councilman Brown, did you have a question for the chief or for the chief?
Actually, since he's there, I'll ask my questions to him first. So $4,000 this year, past year, Chief?
Losses in 2014, $4,787.50.
Okay, so that's what's unrecovered above what's been charged in 2014. Is that my understanding correctly?
Correct. Once the company paid us for the reports, we were $4,700 short at the end of the year.
All right. I think that's all I need to ask you. I had a couple of questions in regards to the other part, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Hiller?
I have a lot of questions and concerns on this, and they're varied. In terms of the police departments, since you're here, I'm confused. If the fee went from $2.50 a report to $5 a report from the company, but people were paying $5 a report, then why did it, does this, our net should have been zero, I would think. I don't understand why it went up.
Well, because of the administrative costs associated with having our personnel do the data entry, make copies of reports, they put into the system. The reports coming through the system go through our records admin portion. That's why some of that cost is associated with
Okay,
it.
so it's been, this is our cost to manage it, not, I'm just,
That's the charge that U.S. Police Reporting charges
that's what I thought.
per reports.
But if people paid for those reports, if it cost me $5 and I paid $5 to U.S. Reporting, then why would, yeah, well, people pay us to get the reports. So this is our bill to U.S. Reports? I'm sorry.
Correct.
Whatever the name of it
Yeah,
is.
they charge us per report, and their charge went from $2.50 to $5 a report is what they charge the police department for that service.
Okay, well-
So if we continue to charge $5 per reports, we're just going to basically break even minus the cost it takes us to do the data entry and place those reports into the system.
Okay, but we roughly brought in $4,065 that we spent we passed through. Is that correct?
I don't understand the question, ma'am.
This
I'm
was
sorry.
our bill to the reporting company. The $4,065?
I don't have that sheet, ma'am. I'm not real sure what you're referring to.
The bill that went from $2,065 to $4,065? My point is, I guess often the people that need these reports are the victims. They were in an accident, they were involved in some altercation that they're needing this report to go. And often these individuals, I might be wrong, but my knowledge of them is that they don't have a lot of money. And so overall, my thought is breaking even on those routine reports, that we have routines to handle, and that, you know, as long as we're breaking even, I have a little heartburn about raising the rates, and I understand maybe in the long term, the difference between $5 and $8 might not seem a lot, but I'm concerned about that. A corresponding concern that I have is the dollars that we're putting down here, both for the police department or anybody else. If we're paying a clerk $15 an hour, our actual cost is probably at least $30 to pay for that employee, and then the city has typically underrepresented our true cost for employees if we're trying to pick that up. Probably not as significant in yours as these others where we're talking about IT or legal and having to do a lot of research and a lot of work. But I'm just...
So,
I think we're getting off the base here
Well, I was
from
just
what we
concerned.
need to do. City Manager, can you provide some help here?
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify what Chief Brown is saying, that there is a specific identifiable cost to respond to that person, and it includes both the fee that we pay to the company plus the clerical activities specifically associated with responding to that request. So that's the simple math there. The question that we have philosophically is, do we want to cost recover, which we've talked about, cost recovery for these types of activities, or do we want to spread it around to the entire tax-paying base to cover those costs? So it really is a fairly it's a decision that the policy decision this body wants to make. What we did is we brought back a cost recovery model based on best practices that exist around the state, and understanding that a lot has changed since we put this in place 15 years ago. So I don't think it would be fair to get the chief deeper into this, but what we've represented in this is the specific costs associated with responding to a request for information.
Okay. Are there other questions for the chief? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate
You
your
bet.
help. Now, are there any other questions for the city attorney? Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we just talked about unrecovered costs for the police reports, and I didn't catch all the numbers that the city attorney mentioned, but I heard 14 extensive inquiries requiring greater than 5 hours. So I guess my first question is, do we have an estimate on unrecovered costs aside from the police reports? And how much of that unrecovered costs falls into those few extensive inquiries that take up staff time?
I don't have a number of the total of the 346, what the unrecovered cost would be. All we know is that the $13 an hour doesn't come close to what the staff time, when you're looking at legal review, IT review, whether it's an engineer reviewing it, does it come close to what our costs are? But I can't tell you a number of, we didn't recover this amount last year.
Did you have another?
Yeah, I would just follow up by commenting that I support us not running a deficit on providing this service, but I also have concerns. I've had several people contact me today, and whether it's founded or not, the folks with the lease are worried that this is going to make it prohibitive for them to get information that they might need. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to defer this for a couple of weeks,
Okay.
to have more time to study it.
Okay, well, we'll get the specific, let's get a specific date. I don't think we meet in 2 weeks. So the next meeting of the
March 10th.
council would be March 10th, which is really 3 weeks. So that's, I'm sorry, Mr. Comanche?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'd prefer that we push that to March 17th. The March
Okay.
10th agenda is quite full.
Okay. Is
Well,
that
how about
okay
the-
with you?
No? Absolutely.
All right, so Councilwoman Ortiz has moved to defer this item until March 17th.
And
Is there a second? Councilman Brown seconds. Ms. Ortiz?
in doing so, if, Chad, if we can get more information on the request, the 346 that TJ was talking about, the hours, if we could get more information, I think that would be helpful.
On the unrecovered costs,
And then I will get with the police chief, because I always thought that we did everything in-house, so I'm really concerned with what we give them and what they're charging us for, so,
We could find that out,
If we
why it
could-
is,
yeah, if we
why
could-
we use the service.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Councilman Hiller?
And as part of that, I'm confused still, the 346, if maybe those could be, we know that 14 of them were ones that required 5 hours or more of labor. I'm still confused as to whether that includes the police reports or whether those are the
No.
ones that were at the city clerk's office.
No.
So just explaining how many of each we're talking about will help.
Okay. Is there other discussion? Councilman Brown?
One last time, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it's feasible or possible in 3 weeks, and I think the city is doing an admirable job in making most of our public documents public and making them available online. But I am concerned whenever we look at cost increase, like I said, that could affect those that have the lease. So I would ask if maybe in the next 3 weeks there could be some information on any ongoing efficiencies or changes to the systems or anything else with our documents that would further make them available to the public and possibly cut down the administrative costs within the departments also. Because just because we've been using a company, maybe that's not the only company, or maybe we need to relook the way we handle our police reports. Maybe that's an alternative. So,
Okay,
thank you.
A suggestion for consideration. Other comments? Councilman Manspeaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see CD and DVD as an option for the formats, but what if somebody were to bring in like a flash drive? and have that information put on their flash drive.
I think that's something we've done. I know we do that, and are moving towards that in prosecution. If somebody brings their own flash drive, their own CD, we're happy to put it on that, whatever device that is.
So that is an option, it's just not a fee-related option?
Right.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to defer action on the ordinance till March the 17th, please vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the item is deferred. We go to action item B, the ordinance on expenditures.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson, allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of November 29, 2014 through January 2, 2015, and enumerating said expenditures therein.
Thank you. We've heard the ordinance. Is there the pleasure of the council? Councilwoman Ortiz moves to approve the expenditures, and Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Now we'll have a discussion. Are there any questions?
I know this is going to sound very comical, but as I was looking at the expenditures, I know that we buy crazy things, but I saw a Kilts USA for $5,000.
Do you know what page that's on, if we need to get back to that? Or do you have it itemized? I don't.
USA Kilts.
Maybe that's something we need to get back to.
Mr. Mayor, that's something we'll have to come back to you with additional information on.
Do you want to defer approval of the expenditures, or can we
No, I'm not going to
approve with
defer
that,
approval, but
with the knowledge that you're going to be able to hear what the response
yes,
of
sir.
the background is. So is there any other questions or comments on the expenditures? We have a motion. Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the expenditures are approved. There are no applications. So we go to item 5D.
D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2015 St. Patrick's Day Street Party.
Councilwoman Hiller.
This resolution would approve the ability to have the street party be managed from 7 a.m. March 14th all the way to 2 a.m. on the 15th for the sponsoring partners, and provided that they secure a temporary permit from the Alcoholic Beverage Commission and comply with all state laws.
And you will so move.
And I move that we would support this.
Okay. Councilman Hiller moves approval of this, and Councilman Brown seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
The mayor votes, and your vote?
Yes, I'm sorry, I vote yes.
Ms. Ortiz? Oh,
On this particular item? Okay, you want to erase the board? Do you have a question?
Well, the only question I had, this is on the 14th and the 15th? That's Saturday and Sunday, right?
It's Saturday this year is the celebration day.
So we're going from 7 a.m. on Saturday to Sunday?
That lets them close the street. They won't be serving alcohol that whole time.
Okay, I guess that was my...
Yes.
Yeah, I think they moved the
Because
St. Patrick's Day parade is now on a Saturday rather than on St. Patrick's Day.
And they need to block the street, blocking the street and securing it is included as part of this permit.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
and we have a vote. We'll vote again. All those in favor of the item 5D, vote yes. Opposed, vote no. I vote yes.
we have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We go to item 5E.
E is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2015 Modern Day Irish Fest.
Councilman Hiller.
And this event is sponsored by Modern Day Parish. A little more modest in the the time, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for celebrations outdoors on Saturday, the 14th of March as well.
And you
Move to approve.
move to Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We will complete our action items. We will proceed to the non-action items. Item 6A.
A is a discussion of the Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040 and an element of the city's comprehensive plan.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to commend Mr. Fyander and the Planning Department and others who have worked very diligently to communicate with all potentially impacted parties pertaining to the Land Use and Growth Management Plan. I know that he's actually been in front of the County Commission a couple of times and met with the county planning folks several times to give opportunity for people to provide input because of some perceptions as to what this did to them. And at this point, I've asked Mr. Fyander to come back to this body and to provide a brief overview and to update, though you've seen this item before, and then we're going to come back for direction and action by this council, I believe, next week.
Okay.